We are resuming with part 2 of this. Now, part 1 was in a blurry recording, so I had to fix my recording settings. And in part 1, we are refactoring our backend API to get books out of a Mongo Atlas cluster. And so we have completed the list, all books, get a book by ID, an update book by ID, and an add book. And so the code for that is here. Feel free to pause it if you are just coming across this now. You can pause the video and kind of, if you're writing code, that's fine. But that kind of left us with the next operation, which is what? Our next operation is deleting a book by ID, and frankly, the last operation before we move on to, well, what are we doing next with our retro Amazon? So let's delete a book by ID, and we are no longer working with an array, so we can kind of delete all of that logic. But we do have a database module now with a function called delete book. And similar to in the last video, this delete one operation returns an object with information about that operation. It's called, so we just say result, and then we return result. And so if I kind of go over here, we'll say db result equals await. And we need to make this function async. And we need to bring in delete book because, well, yes, Connor.
Should we, instead of just having the /ID, should we make it /delete/ID?
Yeah, and so our route that we put yesterday, we said /delete/ID. So it's /books/delete by the ID. And maybe do like an if deleted count is 1, then we send a book with the ID deleted. Else we say book not deleted, and let's just start there before we add some try catches. All right, so if I kind of go back into here and I list all books, I made a bunch of dummy books. How to Code 5, there's an ID for How to Code 5. If I look at my route, localhost 3003 API, let's actually save this, delete by ID, and putting this inside my retro Amazon. And API books delete, and I paste in the ID. If I hit send, it does say that that book was deleted. So if I go to get book by ID, paste that in, we see we get a null result. And maybe we don't want that to say null. Maybe we want that to say book not found or something. But if I go to list all books and scroll down, we no longer have a How to Code 5. Okay, so our delete operation is working. Let me save these requests and come back here. Let's wrap all of this in a try catch. Maybe one more thing to test this against is with a book ID that was already deleted. So if we go do that, then it says not deleted if you give it an ID that doesn't exist. All right, so next we're going to write some new code. And so we're going to You know, if I'm having retro Amazon, we're gonna have some books, and you're gonna be able to buy those books. But of course, you have to have user accounts to buy the books. And so, I kind of am interested. If you just go to Amazon.com, let me open up incognito, so I haven't been logged in, right? So, if I go to like register an account, they give you a name field, mobile number or email, and a password. And so there's not a lot of information initially. Although, I mean, at some point they're going to collect your shipping information, like your address.
Credit card information.
Yeah, at some point you're gonna do credit cards. But let's just keep it simple, right? Bare bones it. And you know, we can always have another form for filling it out like they do, you know. So let's just start with these fields: your first and last name. Let's just do email. I didn't even realize you could just use your mobile number. Password, at least 6 characters. Okay. So that's what we're gonna do here, and we're gonna make a new. We're going to make a new JavaScript file called user.js. So let's click on API and let's click new file, user.js. And similar to book, right, we need to import express. And we also need to build up an express router. So to like bare bones this, const router equals express router. And then at the bottom we do an export router as user router. So that's kind of like the minimums that we need to kind of have our own routes. And then back in server, you can kind of remember what we did over here is we need to install this app.use, and we need to bring it in. Here we did an import at the beginning, so we're going to start with an import. Import user router from that path. So line 3 is the line I just added. Import user router from the user.js file. And then we're going to say app.use / API / users user router.
You did app.user.
Thank you. I did app.user. It needs to be app.use. I'm noticing line 6 is not being used, so I can delete line 6 for now. Okay, and let's just make our first route, which is like listing all the users, right? So this will be router.get list, and we're just going to test the route with the res.send, sure, hello from Amazon.com, user file, user route. Okay, so we're just testing express routes here, that we can make a new route for listing all of our users, that we need to make that route inside of Postman. Okay, so let's spin up a Postman route to do that. So now I'm not working with books anymore. So I'm going to close all my book routes. Close, 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 close. I'm going to go to Retro Amazon, click the ellipsis, 3 dots, and add a request. This is going to be list all users. And I'm also going to do this. In Retro Amazon, I'm going to actually make some folders. I'm going to add a folder called books. And I'm going to drag all of my book routes into there. Right? And I'm going to make another folder called users. And then I'll drag my users into there because organization is dandy, right? Organization is nice. So here's a get request for all users. Yes? No. No, it shouldn't. Like, so if I kind of go back here and I go to list all books and I hit, we still get all of our books, right? You're just changing where you're saving that request to. So if I go back to list all users, what is my route? Well, it's to localhost 3003. API users list. And we get a little text message back saying hello from the user route. Good stuff. All right, let's bring in a debug package. So let's import debug from debug, and let's call it debug user as such. And then let's say debug user getting all users. So that now when we hit this same route, we get a little getting all users. You guys mess with changing the colors? I don't like that my database is the same color as my user. How do I change my user color?
It's in general.
Yeah. Jacob posted it.
It's in general.
General on Discord.
So if I go to general and Discord, debug server.color. So in other words, if I go here and I say debug user dot color equals, and we don't get a wide array, but let's just say 11. And now I hit that route. Well, that didn't work. Example, debug server dot color equal, oh, in quotes. In quotes. Let's hit that.
Mine works. Maybe do single quotes.
Single quotes? I don't know. Debug user dot color equals quotes. All right.
What if 11 is yellow?
What if? All right. Well, how about?
Oh wait, that's because 11 isn't one.
Oh, that's not on the options. Okay. Thank you. All right. All right. That worked. So you want to change your debug server colors. There is a color chart. This was in the debug. I'm sure that was in the docs. Is that where you found that, Weinrich? Weinrich's not here. Okay. What do we want to do here? Well, let's go back to our database module, and you can make a case for putting it in the same file. You can make a case for putting it in a different file. I'm not mad at you for whatever case you want to make, but let's put it in async function. Let's just start with add user. We're going to create a user collection, insert the one user. and return a result. So our database function is pretty simplistic. We're just going to take a user, put them in, return some sort of result data based on that operation, and export add user. So at the bottom, make sure to export the new function that you just wrote. One thing that we could do here that I'm just thinking out loud, we could make our user a customer by default, right? So just make them a, give them a role of customer. So maybe we would do something like user.role equals, I'm gonna make it an array called customer. And so even though, you know, by default, they would be, yeah, the customer role. That makes sense. So we're going to add user by default. So let's kind of go back over here. We'll come back to listing users, router.post, right? We're posting a new customer /add from the rec body. Const new user is rec.body. By the way, we are going to be doing data validation next week after a little bit of lab. Right? We're going to actually get into some labs here, but it is important to validate that the new user has the right fields. And you can do that on the back end and the front end. You could do data validation in both places, and we're going to learn to do that. For right now, we're not doing a whole lot of data validation. Let's bring in import add user from our database module. It's picking up from my other files, kind of the syntax here, and it's giving me suggestions. Try catch. This one does not have. It's picking up on my 3 different ways that I've written this. That's awesome. We could flush that out. And let's mark this function async. Okay, so let's spin up Postman. This is listing all the users. I'm going to go right here in users folder. And I'm going to add a request, and this is going to be a post request called add new user. I'm going to click on the body tab and form encoded and go back to my fields that are relevant. Now there was a full name field. There was an email field and a password field. I think that was basically it. Full name, email, password. I guess we could do confirm password. But we could just confirm the password. We don't need, I'm not going to store that. I'm just going to do these 3. So add new user, full name, again, lack of validation is not a good thing. But let's just start with the bare bones. And Let's give it a http://local hosts port 3000 API users slash, what was it, new? Thank you, slash add. Let's click on send, and it says user added. Let's go back to Atlas. So let me connect into Atlas. Via Compass. Let me connect in. And if I go to my Retro Amazon, I have a user collection now with one user with an array, password to password. Okay, cool. Starting point, back to the code. Let's make it better. Okay, so, you know, what do I know about creating users and saving their credentials in a database? First thing is the first time we're doing this. First thing I'm going to say is, should you do it, right? So more of a conversation of realizing when you're storing credentials, you're storing information about users, and you're kind of responsible for that information. And especially when it comes to like credit card information, your systems have to be secure, okay? Because if you get compromised, you will get sued, and if you, you know, if you don't have the financial backing, you know, you might bring your company to its knees, right? So Target, I can think of as an example, you know, they were storing credit card information, and then they lost that credit card information, and then they lost, you know, millions or billions or whatever of dollars. And so there's a responsibility that comes into play here when you're storing user information. And so there's a case to be made of like, hey, just let me use Facebook login system. Let me use on my website, register for an account using my Facebook credentials or using my Gmail, because then you're not responsible for like, well, if you lose it, ultimately that data is being stored somewhere else. And it would have to be Facebook to be quote unquote hacked, not your servers, okay? But, okay, so let's just say, okay, we want to go ahead and store credential information. We wouldn't be the first website to do that. You know, certainly that's something that's done all the time. Well, if we're gonna store username and passwords, what we're doing right now is clearly not secure, right? You're not gonna store someone's username and password in plain text in a string, right? That password field should be encrypted so that even like a database administrator can't tell you what the password is. And so there's a tool that we're going to learn, a package to encrypt passwords so that even people that have the keys to the kingdom, aka database admins, have keys to all the data. People with the keys to the kingdom still cannot tell you, nor can they determine your password. Okay, a good back-end database, you should not be able to read their passwords, nor should a user be able to even request their password and you tell that to them. Now, you know, obviously they should be able to reset their password, but you know, that's what we're going to do. And so the tool to do this is actually a really cool little package. It's fairly popular. So let's go ahead and go to npm.js and look up a tool called Bcrypt. All right, Bcrypt is going to basically we're going to use this to hash our passwords. And there's a technique they use that's called salting your password. And so this is kind of a really neat little video I want to show you guys about the security that's built into Bcrypt. Let's start by installing Bcrypt, and then I'm going to show you this video. I'll add it to the playlist. So in order to do this, I'm going to stop my server from running, Control C, terminate it, and npm I bcrypt. And let me find this video I want to show about Bcrypt. Okay, and so here we're adding a user. Now next, let's log in a user. And so let's do a router.post /login. Now everything's plain text still, so I just want to kind of so coming across is going to be an email and a password. So maybe we need to write our database logic next. Async function login user. Well, our user is going to have an email address. So let's connect to our database and do a find one user based on their email. Let's see how that looks. So here we're hitting our user collection, doing a find one based on the user's email. So we're hitting the database based on their email. Now this is a result user, right? So I'll refactor this to say result user. So here's the basic premise, right? We're hitting our database, seeing if the user exists by their email. And if that's true, if that's truthy, bless you. If that's truthy, then we see if their passwords match. And if the email is found and the passwords match, in other words, the result from the database password is the user's password, then we return. Here, if it's not found, we say, hey, the user's not found. We could return, you know, user email not found. Little string that says user email not found. Otherwise, we could say return, we'll say email or password incorrect. In fact, both of these we could just say email or password. Something like this for our first iteration. So like everything else, we'll go ahead and export that. All right, let's export login user. Let's go back to our user module and import login user. And let's read our user, const user. Now, our result is either going to be an object with a password or it's a string. Okay. So, we'll go back to user. So let's send our user over, and this is going to be async await. So if it's an object, then let's just send our user back. Now, refactor that to be result user. Else res.status 400 with an error saying result user. Again, this could be an object, or it could be a string. This is not exactly how I'm used to writing this line, so this might not work exactly how I expect it to. But again, we're reading username and password. We're calling the function, passing the user in. It's either going to be an object, in which case it returns a good, like the user logged in. Otherwise, it's a string with an error message. So it's just an if-else. So when I do a post to the login route, I know you guys are still typing. Let me test this to make sure that what you're typing is correct. So I'm going to go to a new request. Add request. Login user. It's going to be a post. API users login. I'm going to send an email and a password. My user eagudmested@rankin.edu. And I'm just going to give it a bad password. And localhost, it might not be booted. My server's probably not booted. It is not. Let's boot our server. Now let's hit the route. Okay, that's what I would expect. Email or password incorrect. And if I give it a password of password, we're getting our user object back. So successful login. Maybe I could say successful login with, or maybe we just say welcome. Welcome result user dot, we have a full name, don't we? Let's welcome the user's full name. So if I hit that again, welcome Evan Gudmested. If I do something like that, email or password incorrect. Okay, so we got everyone caught up. Let's change Bcrypt. We're gonna hash our password. So it's gonna start by bringing in Bcrypt, and we're gonna do that by an import statement. Do I need, hold on, let me get my syntax right here. No, that's right. Okay. I'm gonna bring in Bcrypt from Bcrypt. And when we register our user, here's our new user. We're going to update their password. New user dot password So we're updating their password to be it's a pretty simple function, bcrypt hash the current password, and this 10, if you notice kind of the IntelliSense here, the second number is the salt or rounds. So you could hard code a salt if you gave it a string, or if you give it an integer, as we're going to give it, it's a number of salt rounds. It says the salt to be used in encryption. If it is specified as a number, then a salt will be generated. So they get to generate a salt with a number of salt rounds. So this is 10 salt rounds. So it'll generate a salt for you. And I believe what salt rounds are is, we talk about slowing down the faster and faster computers. I believe salt rounds is what that does. So, and that is correct. If you kind of just do a quick Google search, what do salt rounds do in Bcrypt? With the salt round, they actually mean the cost factor. The cost factor controls how much time is needed to calculate a single Bcrypt hash. The higher the cost factor, the more hashing rounds are done. Increasing the cost factor by 1 doubles the necessary time. So again, they talk about in that video slowing the hackers down, and that's what a salt round is. It is a cost factor to plan the complexity of the hash. A higher salt round ensures more complex and secure hashes are used. However, setting this too high can take a long time, resulting in a bad user experience. So again, it kind of comes at a performance cost. Okay, so suffice to say, this is now going to be much more secure way of saving passwords using this little utility with salt rounds. Now, let's go ahead and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete my user in my database. Delete the user. Okay, so my user document's gone, and I will recreate them, add a new user. Again, user added. And if I go back into my database and look at my new user, now I have a hashed password, not plain text. And it's, it's basically using Bcrypt, and Bcrypt has this feature called salt rounds, which can really help secure your passwords. Okay, nothing connected to the internet is secure. Okay, so if you want to, make a password completely secure, just disconnect, unplug, turn off the computer, and you're secure, right? Nothing is 100% secure. But this is much more secure than what we were doing before. Yeah.
Is there a difference between adding the hash to the beginning or the end of your password?
The salt rounds.
But yeah, no, not like the rounds. Like if you just wanted to add like instead of
The
an extra 10 hash digits at the end, you can't substitute it rounds.
I mean, so that's a good question. So does it make a difference? I think was your original question, and presumably no.
I feel like that might be a little more, like even more encrypted, just because then you don't have to.
It just depends on, does the hacker know that, right? Right. So do you put it at the end or at the beginning? It's really, when we use Bcrypt, it handles the salt for us. And so is it at the beginning? I don't know. Is it at the end? No idea. Bcrypt kind of handles that for us. And so yeah, good question. I hope I answered it. Okay. Nathan, did you have something there? No. Okay. So that's how to encrypt a password. Then when we log in, we need to refactor our login to use Bcrypt to decrypt, right? You have to decrypt on your login route, and I'm going to change this if else to look something like this. If result user is truthy and await Bcrypt compare the user's password that was provided with the result user's hashed password, right? So here we have an unencrypted password comparing it against an encrypted password. So now we're just kind of writing that logic here, telling us if our passwords match. So if the result user, by the way, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a debug user, result user, and just take a look at that object. And then just like before, I'm going to do a welcome message. Welcome result user dot full name, else email or password incorrect. Okay, so it's actually quite simple to incorporate Bcrypt, and it again just makes everything way more secure. So now if I go back to my login user and I log in, maybe my server crashed. Let's see what's going on. Okay. Okay, it probably doesn't like that I don't have my hash rounds. Bcrypt compare, await Bcrypt compare. Oh, user's password with the result user password. That looks right. Let me find my mistake. It says data and hash arguments required. So it is with my Bcrypt somewhere. Okay, here's my mistake. I was doing the password comparison here, right? And that's what was breaking. I forgot to refactor my database logic. And so here, I just want to return result user. Like basically, it's going to find a user or it's not. Okay, based on the email. That was my problem. Now if I go back to user.js, okay, let's bring this back in. Okay, so this isn't, there we go, okay. So now I can compare passwords, and let's see what breaks now. Okay, now it welcomed my user, and now it's working as is. Okay, so I just didn't refactor my database logic. So it really simplifies the database logic. Let's just find a user by their email, and maybe we just write, this could be refactored as find user by email or something along those lines. But the point is, we are now using Bcrypt to encrypt our passwords and compare those passwords with the passwords that were given to us. All right. This puts us at the end of today, and this puts us at a point where we can work on some labs next week. Maybe a little bit more coding along, but definitely at a point where we're getting close to some labs.